Hello, everybody. I'm Sally Hanley, author of the Holly and Ivy Cozy Mystery Series, and I am happy to introduce this quarter's moderator, Peg Roach, also known as M.E. Roach. And Peg is going to talk a little bit about herself before she starts. So, Peg, take it away.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say that I haven't moderated a book club before. So when I sat in on your one from last month, it looked like you basically just kind of brought up your own views on certain things. Where I'm living now, there is a book club, and the moderator usually has a list of questions that we kind of go around the room and read off and answer. So I do have a couple sets of questions. One was apparently the official list put out by the publisher, and the other was from a book club chat newsletter that's online. I was a nurse. I still am a nurse. I do have my license still. And I started writing because I always wanted to write, I think, but my first books were really trying to sort of update what books had been written during the 50s and 60s for young readers about what nursing was like, the student nurse mysteries, Sue Barton, Cherry Ames. And I discovered that there was nothing that had been done since the 50s and 60s. So my first three novels were mysteries that were basically written to sort of try and update those. And then I wanted to bring my characters, I wanted them to grow up. So I have several novels that have come after that, and I have a standalone, and I'm currently working on, I have like 3 other projects going at the moment. So, but a friend had recommended Killers of the Flower Moon, and I loved it the first time I read it. I reread it. I did not see the movie. I didn't want to see it before we had this discussion. And I have my selection for next month, Winter Counts, is I had seen David Wyden interviewed several times, and thought that his book was really great. And then my first adult novel was has several Native American characters in it, and I was living in a section of California which George can speak to, but a number of tribes in it, and it introduced me. It was the first time I'd lived in an area with a Native American population, and I had a lot of things to learn, which I tried to incorporate some of that into my own. So that's me. So I guess we'd start with, what did you guys think of the book?
It was riveting.
It was what?
Riveting.
Riveting, yes.
I can't say I enjoyed it. I thought it was very, very good. And I don't usually read true crime. I read fiction. But I really kept reading. I kept wanting to go on. I didn't know the outcome. So for me, it was suspenseful. I didn't know how it ended, what happened, but it was horrible. Just terrible.
Well, as part of his, I think that was one thing that I liked about it was a part of history that we never learned anything about. So
I never heard of it.
No.
It amazed me that frequently when well, all 4 of us are writers, so if you belong to a critique group and you put in some information about like the setting or the historical background, you always get, now that's an information dump. And I'm telling you, I never at any point in time felt that way about this book. The history, he made the history come alive, and it was, as Ellis said, riveting was exactly the word. It was like, oh my God, to know that there weren't organized police departments, and then to learn about the formation of the FBI from the start. I just found it like fascinating, and I didn't want to stop reading it. I had a friend tell me that she tried to watch the movie, but that it was so violent she couldn't watch it. And that's Scorsese, right? But I said the as horrendous as these crimes were, the author didn't focus on the brutality, or rather the graphic descriptions of the crime.
Off screen.
Yeah, it was enough to know you were horrified that this person was murdered, just like executed, actually. But then, the story behind, the crime is, yes. And the history at the time was what kept you moving through the book.
It was genocide.
Yeah.
They really wanted to wipe out this entire group. And the United States government was equally at fault. I mean, they moved these people to a barren land where they thought they couldn't do anything. And then they took away when they discovered what a mistake they'd made by putting them on top of this oil, they did their best to take it back away. It was awful.
Yeah.
It's
I found it intriguing, and I kept thinking that, this proves that that real life, actual events are stranger than anything we can write in fiction. And I got pissed off a few times. I just wanted to, wring somebody's neck because they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, and do it exactly the opposite.
Just wrote it off.
Yeah. And then when we got near the end and we found out that, what the hell was the guy's name with the glasses who was a friend to everybody?
Hale.
Hale. That he wasn't the only one killing the Indians. And nobody's did anything. I mean, if we could open the the author looked into several of those and figured out who did it. But they've been dead for 100 years, so there's no punishment.
They all got away with it, and I assume they kept the money that they stole. Yeah,
that's a given.
I think there were a couple things that were interesting, though, and it was fascinating to think that the tribe were at one time considered the richest people in the world. And that the chief, when the government, as I understood it, when they first put them there, one of the things he did was negotiate that they would hold on to the mineral rights, so that even though they were given the land, they didn't have they maintained control of what it was going to, produce. The fact that they were considered it was kind of a slap in the face that they weren't considered intelligent, that the tribe was not considered intelligent enough to manage its own holdings. And yet they were, it was their leaders who had negotiated this in the first place.
I think that was just one of the ways they wanted to keep control of everything, the government, instead of letting them be adults and treated like rational, sane people.
Well, I don't think it was at the top either. It was people within that community who basically seemed, at least to the way I was seeing it, they were influencing the governmental decisions as to who was going to.
The ordinary people who didn't think the Indians deserved anything.
Well, it definitely, if you had money, you could pay off anybody, or you could pay people to commit the crimes for you. And it was like and then it was that catch-22 that we just talked about. They had all the money, but if somebody was poisoning them and they couldn't get to a doctor because their guardian wouldn't okay for them to go to, you know, like a hospital outside their area, they were murdered without, you know, any punishment or any even, that's the whole thing. We don't even know how many people were murdered in this whole process because that's how they did it.
And they said the 605 was underestimated.
Right.
They were
Yeah.
sure there were many more.
You know, and the
Incredible.
Schoen brothers, the two doctors
Oh,
there, they that they were in the thick of it all. You know, I think they were as dirty as anybody else. They
maybe
were right
worse. As doctors, you would think they couldn't have done things they did.
Well, I'm sorry, George, go ahead.
Well, as soon as somebody was taken out of the doctor's care, they started getting better. Why didn't anybody say, what's going on here with these doctors? You know?
Well, it just seemed like none of the white people would speak out against anybody else, but they also seemed to be afraid. And it seemed like the detectives would get to a certain point where they had now evidence pointing in a different direction, and then they backed off. Either they were bought off, or they were threatened, or they were murdered themselves.
They were murdered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I hate to say this, but we always I grew up believing America were the good guys. And when you read this, you go, oh my God. And if you think things are bad today, guess what? They always were. There was never a golden age when we were just great and did everything the right way and honorably. That's a myth. That's an American myth.
I think the other thing that was interesting for all the research that Grann did on this, that there was no retaliation from the Native American community against their white guardians. I mean, everything that he pointed out was truly the evil intent of the guardians against the tribe. Yeah. I thought that was there were no bad guys in the tribe.
I think they felt helpless. I don't think they could see a way to do anything.
I think part of it is they also didn't know the extent of what was happening.
The time was shocking to me that this went on in the 20s. I didn't realize there was so much lawlessness that just unchecked, and there were no real legal authorities at that time. I just thought that was back in the 1800s.
Right. It was the Wild West.
I was going to bring this to some of the questions that they had raised. This one, Molly Burkhart is the central figure in this novel. In many ways, she was caught between trying to honor her heritage while also being forced to assimilate to the white culture of Oklahoma. She was very intelligent and did everything in her power to help solve the murders of her loved ones. And then they say, let's talk a little bit about Molly. Were you familiar with Indian schools before you read this?
Recently, I've been hearing a lot and how awful they were.
Yeah. And they continued up until I think somewhere in the early 70s. That's hard. It's hard to imagine, but you know, that's the way it was. And a comment on the mineral rights, you know, in prior times, tribes owned an area and it belonged to the tribe, not to the individuals. And one of the ways that the white man figured out how to get rid of the Indians, and they did it right there, was the allotments. You know, I think 140 acres to every adult. Well, then they could buy and get the title, and they were doing that. And I think the chief realized that that was going to happen. And the only out for the tribe to have some type of unification were the mineral rights, you know, and nobody thought there would be anything there. They probably were laughing at him, the white guys, when they were negotiating the contract. And he said, I want the mineral rights. It's tough.
If they thought anything was there, they wouldn't have let them have it.
No, no.
Right.
Well, they also weren't allowed to sell the mineral rights, weren't they? I can't remember how he explained that. The
They had to be inherited or
I
something.
think
Yeah.
that the
And that's
mineral
why
rights had to be
they
inherited.
kept marrying
Yeah.
the Indian women
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
control.
So getting back to your question about Molly Burkhart,
Mm.
you know, when you see these pictures of these women, you know, so stoic, well, any pictures of the Indians were, you know, like very stern and unsmiling. And but you know, my question is, after a certain point in time, why would any of the Indians, men or women, marry a white person? Because there was only one purpose. It seemed there wasn't a single person who really married somebody because they loved them. But I think that description of her in the courtroom when her husband was on trial was very I can't think of the word I want to say, but the idea, you could just imagine what she, as a woman, you could just imagine what she was going through, right? Watching
so
and
shocked.
knowing that he was part of the scheme.
Well, she
And
had supported him all the way along. It
right,
wasn't until
Yeah.
the trial that
right. And then he tried to look back at her as he was walking out of the courtroom, and she just was impassive. And I thought, yeah, I'm surprised she didn't spit at him, but it was, she was an interesting character. And then, you know, that point at which she realized that they were killing her whole family, and she locks herself in, and then they're poisoning her, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing that she survived, really, the whole ordeal. But I think the other thing that I found truly upsetting, which I didn't realize, well, none of us did until the very end, when the is it the granddaughter
Maggie.
realizes that the grandson was supposed to, or was the son, their son was supposed to have been at Bill Smith's house the night they blew it up, and he had to live with the fact that his father would have murdered him. It's just like, how then you do wonder, how do you ever recover from that kind of trauma? It's I don't know.
I think having all been taken away to the Catholic schools, and I don't know if they were forced, but other places certainly were.
Yeah.
I think they were kind of brainwashed. And I think in what I know about those schools is they taught obedience.
Yeah.
That was a big, big thing. Not thinking for yourself, but obedience and following the rules. And I think that probably influenced them by the time they had years of that training.
You know, I never thought or thought about the impact of the schools on them, but I think you're absolutely right. That's why, you know, because I kept wondering, why are they so docile? Why don't they just rise up, you know?
Yeah.
But the obedience training, you know, don't speak your own language, cut your hair off, you have to do this. I think you really hit it.
And they were absolutely, you know, uh, divorced from all the great things that their culture provided. You know, all of the rituals that, you know, enrich your life. And yeah, they were a generation, I guess, bereft of whatever it takes to, you know, like an identity, and to identify. They were ashamed of their parents now, because you know, they had been taught that, you know, speaking their own language and believing the beliefs systems that they had, that those were all, you know, passe, old fashioned, savage, whatever. So yeah, And that was just trained out of him, and which is really horrible. I wonder what it's like for them now.
I think they have a lot to overcome because of the past and the way they were raised. The young people now may have a chance to be fully aware, but their parents didn't. The people my age did not.
Right.
They were raised while this was still, the murders might have stopped, but the whole atmosphere and attitude was still there.
Well, I think as George said, most of the schools were closed in the 70s, early 70s.
Which is not that long ago.
But I think
No.
I think that the other thing, going back to why did so many Native Americans marry white? Again, this was kind of set in a small town, you know, where your options are somewhat limited a lot of times, you know, when you come back. And if as it looked like some of these businesses that were run by the white families were, you know, very knowledgeable about how they were going to make their money. So,
Oh yeah.
And he didn't focus on the fact that Native Americans were married Native Americans, because I'm sure that there was some of that too, but it was focusing on the intermarriage, I think, in the story.
Yeah, because it was the best way to get control of everything.
Right.
Just
You know,
murdering
and
that
Mary,
white didn't do it because you had to inherit.
Right.
Yeah. You know, marrying another Indian, nobody's going to get killed. Nobody's going to get murdered. It was insidious what was going on, like Molly and her husband. And I have to admit, I wasn't familiar with the book, but I know it's being hotly discussed on Native American Facebook and Facebook pages. So I had to read it, but I kept saying, "Oh, don't kill Molly! Don't kill Molly!
Mm-hmm.
Please don't kill Molly!"
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what about getting on to, my mind just went blank, the start of the FBI?
Oof.
William.
I think it was just luck that he had the right qualifications and Hoover let him run that group his way, because I understand Hoover was a real control freak. Everything had to be done his way.
Well, when it's Tom White was his name. He sort of fell into that role, but he was the antithesis of everything that Hoover wanted. He wanted all his guys in suits, and White comes in and says, you know, you need to have people who can work undercover and all, in basic, I mean, which is now an accepted way to, well, George could speak to that, about certainly a way to, you know, uncover crime nowadays. But that was I thought a really interesting thing. He was, you know, he had definite moral fiber.
Yeah, he was the one guy you picture in the white suit on the white horse, right? You know,
Yeah.
he did things for the right reasons, and he respected people. He didn't have even if he had any of the prejudices that were common at the time, he dealt with everybody as a person and didn't feel like, you know, these people deserve to die because after all, they're only Indians, you know. Come on. It's like shooting a dog, right? So he was and too, like, you know, this almost, I could picture this as a good source for a movie, because it's almost like a Stallone cast of characters that he pulls together, this mismatched group of guys like Grann, the Indian that couldn't write reports. Everything was in his head. And so Hoover fired him, but he was he was the guy that could most easily infiltrate the Indian population because he was an Indian. So I particularly enjoyed how White was able to assemble a team that could actually get something done. And it's interesting when you're really, really good at something. Even guys like Edgar Hoover can't, they need you, and that was the thing. He was worried about the teapot dome scandal. So he had to have a win on this one. And so and he didn't know how to do this, but he picked the right guy. So, and that was kind of one redeeming aspect of the whole situation.
But he did not give any credit to White. Even years later, when they were investigating,
yes,
White offered to provide background. Hoover never passed on that information.
Do you think if it had been in a bigger city with perhaps in the East, Hoover would have let White run it like he did?
Not in that
there was
10-gallon
would have been more knowledgeable. I think he saw it as a backwater that, would pretty much be unnoticed. And if it was a win, it would be really, he could play that up.
Yeah. The Teapot Dome really is a bigger player in this than I thought at first. Because if it had not been for the Teapot Dome scandal, Hoover wouldn't have given a darn about something on the ends. He'd have probably sent one of his dark suit, white shirt guys out there and said, "Oh, it's okay."
That's a holdover, isn't it? They're still dressed that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that was. But at the same time, like when you're thinking about how these Indians have been treated, at the very end, when the author goes back and this woman takes them out and shows that they have come in and installed all these wind turbines on the reservation without asking anybody. And then, like it's the Indians' job to go and question it, and then they come back and say, you don't have any say about this because it doesn't affect blah blah blah. So it's just what we have done to the American Indians is just you can't even describe it. It just leaves me speechless, and that's hard to do.
I can attest to that.
Oh gosh.
The whole thing was stunning. I mean, I always knew we treated the Indians terribly, but I didn't see this systematic elimination because by mistake they let them have something, the oil there. If they'd known, they never would have done it. And then they just, from the very beginning, they tried to get it all away from them with the guardians and not letting them, declaring them incompetent and all this.
And then they could only buy from the store of the Guardian store. It was like the whole thing was so rigged.
Like the mill villages.
Yeah. And they were charged more for everything. The Guardian would go out and buy a car at a cheap price and then charge the Indian like $1,000 more for the car. It just, the unfairness of it is, again, leaves me speechless.
Yeah. And
do you think this was happening in other tribes?
George? Absolutely.
I imagine it was.
Yeah, well, no, the other tribes didn't have that kind of money, but yes, the oversight, not necessarily a lot of guidance or guardians, but the oversight, the allotment of land at the 140 acres. At first glance, everybody's going to get their own piece of property. Well, yeah, I think it was up in the Blackfeet or in the Lakotas. They really had a problem with that. As soon as the allotments were made, the white traders would come in and get a guy drunk and get this property signed over to him because they didn't really understand it. Yeah, stuff like that was going on all over the country. And a part of it is it's a holdover from the 1800s, where, you know, in most cases, it was okay to kill an Indian because Indian couldn't testify against a white man, just like the Chinese guys couldn't testify against a white man. So yeah, it was going on all over. Here in California, just as an aside, to give you a little feeling for what happened in the late 1800s, California came into the Union as a free state, no slaves, except for Indians. Indians could be owned and held as slaves. They had hunting seasons where you would go out, a group of white men, and track down Indians, shoot and kill them, because nobody could testify against them. So yeah, stuff like that was going on
What
all
period
over
was
the
that?
country.
What period was that?
The late 1800s. You know,
You could see this back in the book, if you read the
yeah,
book, all the photographs. The
Yeah.
land they gave them was barren nothing.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and I love the photographs that he put in.
I did too.
You know, it really, they came at the right time. They weren't overdone. You know, they just, hi, here's Molly.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
I
really
thought the book
humanized.
was very well done.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't overly dramatic or anything. It was just factual, but presented so well. I really thought it was great.
And I think, you know, what you mentioned earlier about it being suspenseful. I mean, it did read like a murder mystery, right? Because these people or you just don't know what's going on. And I think at the moment when you realize it's Hale is behind it, you're shocked, right? Because he was supposed to be, he was going to investigate for Molly, and he was going to, you know, he was going to take care of everything. And then you find out he's the one behind it all. It was, yeah, it was that aha moment that you get in a mystery novel. So yeah,
And I
that was
didn't know
pretty.
that he would ever be caught or convicted.
And I thought it was great that the author, you know, like he had a novelist's sense of writing, because, you know, he told a story, and if he let us know it was, or even hinted at the fact that it was Hale from the beginning, I think it wouldn't have had the impact that it did. You know, like the total betrayal of this
Yeah.
entire family by this man, and not just them. I mean, there were others that Hale had done this to, but it was really well written.
I
I
think it
so.
was really interesting too when he actually finished the first part of the book, introducing what the crime had been, that he actually went back and did all that extra research on what happened to some of these other families that,
and found out how widespread this practice was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that
it was just incredible.
Did
And
anybody see the movie?
No.
Not yet. I
No.
want to, but I was not ready. And also, it's $20 just to rent it.
Ooh.
So I think,
Yeah.
well, you know, we'll see in a while.
It's always better.
But
When I saw that cost for the rent, I thought, we'll just wait a while.
yeah.
I'm not paying $20 to see any movie.
So I'm curious, George, when you said you've seen a lot of this being posted on Facebook, reviews by other Native American groups, what kind of comments are you seeing?
Not real reviews, but you got to see this. This is, you know, just telling each other, you need to watch this. They got it, you know, not like a regular review. In fact, I need to write a review. I don't even know where to start. It'd probably be really short. You know, truth is stranger than fiction. You got to watch this. You got to read this. And you all should write a review with 5 stars.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It is. And I think it's a must read for Americans who think like, you know, Like we were raised to think in the 50s that, you know, America, we're the good guys.
It might be banned in Florida.
I'll bet. Well, somebody'd have to read it first. Oh, no,
Well,
no,
there is that.
they don't have to read it first, do they?
No,
There were a lot they haven't read.
Yeah.
I did a review. I do think that is an important point to make, you know, is that something like this is good to get that, even if it's a short one. I also finished not very long ago his next book, which was called The Wager, which was about a group of ships that set out from England in, oh, it was the late 1800s, I believe. Anyway, they were taking after or maybe it was, no, it was before that, 1600s. Anyway, they were taking out, they knew that the Spanish were, you know, gathering treasures in South America, and they were going to hijack these ships when Spain and England were at war with each other for all those years. Anyway, the ships get separated, and it's basically one of the ships that he's referring to. But it's also, it's, you know, it's history, but it's also sort of a mystery and very, very interesting. So,
You know, one of the things that comes out, which is extremely horrifying in that after part of the book, is that these guys got released from prison.
Yeah.
You know, at like after 10 years for murdering all
Mass
those
murder.
fraud, swindling. The crimes are, like, you know, incalculable. And, you know, they were back out. Well, I loved that they said, you know, at 72, due to his advanced age, and, you know, like,
Right. Yeah.
that made me pause, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at his advanced age of 72, they had to let him out. But the husband
72 isn't what it used to be, huh?
sure
No.
is.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I was really horrified by that. And that, you know, like what we're saying is, and I think, you know, not to step on the next book ahead of time, but if you haven't read it, one of the things that hit me with tremendous force when I did read it was that um, that what we're doing today is as reprehensible as what was done then. And yeah, I
We're
can't wait to
probably just
discuss
better
that
at
book too.
hiding it.
You know, the thing about how these they're put on these reservations, but then they're not allowed to really govern themselves, or,
They're
you know, like,
treated like children,
yeah, and whoever,
bad children.
yeah. So I this is a good, you know, it's good to have read this one first and go to that one, Peg. So you did a masterful choice in the choices and in the order in which we're reading them. So I look forward to that discussion as well.
Has anybody watched Dark Winds, the Jolie porn series?
No.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think it's very good, but there's a lot about how the Navajo are treated and the land they have and the attitudes, you know, like part of it is that takes place in the early 70s. And there was a program where they sterilized the Indian women. When they came in to have a baby or do anything, they sterilized them without their permission or knowledge. Another way to cut down on them, you know, get rid of them.
Just
It makes me wonder what's going on today that we don't know yet. We don't know about.
Yeah. 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 Don't get me started. There are bad things happening, and there's always bad things happening. There always will. Hopefully, there'll be more of us good people than the bad people.
I have to hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, the unfortunate thing is that you feel powerless to do anything about situations like this. You know, it's hard to know what you can do to fight racism except be a decent human being to everybody you meet. It's hard to know. And especially when you're talking about systemic racism that's built into institutions and laws and that it's just it's it's frustrating to know that or I feel powerless is what it is, and that's a rotten way to feel about it.
All I think is about my only place I have anything that's public or noticed by all 5 people who look at my Facebook page. But I do put political things and stuff there because I
Yeah,
feel like being silent is part of it. You're being part of it.
yeah, you're right.
Whatever it is, I think you can't be silent.
Well, I think even living close to reservations or rancheria, you don't necessarily get a good feeling as to, and I shouldn't say a good feeling, a good understanding of how things necessarily operate. Because I think, you know, when you've got side-by-side communities, you know, and you know that tribal members are getting monthly or annual allotments of, you know, money, that they're building these casinos, and a lot of them are doing, you know, really good work, because the tribes that operate the casinos, in terms of putting the money that is made back into the community. But if you're not part of that, you know, there's sometimes some resentment as to, well, they're getting all this money. Why don't they, you know, clean up their towns or their houses or their cars or whatever? You know, there's still, I mean, there's a lot of poverty.
Another writer that deals with a lot of this is William Kent Kruger.
Yes,
His books are
he's
have
very
a lot
good.
about the Ashkenazi, but Ashanab. I've forgotten how you say it. I had to look it up. The Indian
Yeah,
tribes in Minnesota.
I was going to say it's
yeah,
Minnesota, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
His writing
interesting.
is beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, you know, when your choice of winter counts is a really good follow up to this, you know, because it's fiction, but there's a lot of truth in it, and White uh, writes it well. Uh, I'll save it for later, but I think that was an excellent choice.
well, he
You know,
also, sorry, go ahead.
and the, you talked about all the money. Uh, my tribe built a casino here probably 10 years ago, and there's a an ongoing chat, and then there's Facebook, and there is so much bitching about the fact that they're reinvesting all the money uh, into the casino, building a hotel, and buying more land. But a lot of people are bitching they're not getting a check like some tribes do.
Uh,
When you say my tribe, are
Yeah,
you Indian or Native American?
yeah. Karuk, Karuk, we're in Northern California. At one time before the Indian hunting season, we were the largest tribe in the state. Now we're one of the smallest.
Ah,
But
I
yeah,
didn't.
they really, it's funny sometimes to, I better go back to Peg and her questions because I'll just run off.
no, I was just going to say, I did, in fact, I sent an email this morning to David Wyden about his availability, because when I had first contacted him, he's really good about getting, you know, responding. But he didn't know what his teaching schedule was going to be. And I'm almost positive that he's going to say, you know, that Wednesday at noon, or when it's 9 o'clock there, out west, you know, is going to be a good time. But, you know, he has, I know, sat in on other book clubs. but he's very good to talk to.
Yeah, and he's a good speaker. He's down to earth. Uh, he's been promising me for over 3 years to come do my blog, but he's always busy.
Oh, I spoke too soon, huh?
Hey, I said it on one book club where he talked, and I reminded him, and he said, "I'll do it. I'll get it." Still waiting. I do, I do hope you get him, and if
I'm
you
not
do,
optimistic, but I did.
yeah. But if you do, I will really spread the word, and maybe there'll be 6 of us here.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that made me smile, one of the few things that made me smile in reading this book was the phrase "the happy hunting grounds," and I thought, you know, there's so much to be admired about Native American culture in kind of like Celtic, this similar to Celtic traditions. It's tied to the earth, and you know, the sun, the stars, the moon, all of the natural elements are so important in these cultures, that, and they were stripped of that, and it was it they were you know, it was such a it not was it is such a rich culture to have been, and but they were treated like they were savages and uncultured, and you know, not worthy of I don't know what somebody needs to be worthy of, but that phrase "happy hunting grounds," I thought, yeah, that's exactly, you know, the hunting grounds are what was so important to them. And also, you know, I didn't realize that the bison, they killed them because that was their main source of food.
Yeah, it was just another way to get rid of the Indians.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's keeping them out of the land that they wanted. They couldn't hunt there. I mean, if the herd was gone, then the
right.
land would be free for somebody to pick up. But I that idea of the happy hunting ground, because that went through my mind too, wondering whether or not the culture, the Native American approach to not being aggressive was part of the reason that they didn't really fight back, that there was, you know, a more spiritual aspect.
But they, you know, they were warriors. They had, you know, warriors in their tribes as well. But I just
But that was when they knew their enemy. They didn't know their enemy in this
yeah,
situation.
good point.
I
Good
thought it
point.
was really interesting that they bought the bison farm from Ted Turner.
Uh-huh.
This tribe did,
Yeah.
and they're now raising the buffalo
Yeah.
out there. And I don't know that they'll still hunt the way they used to, but um, you never know what might be revived.
Well, they don't need all the byproducts anymore, like
No,
probably
but
they once did.
it would be nice skills for them to have. I mean, I think right now, if I were a terrorist, the first thing I'd do is go after the electrical grid, because the United States population would be paralyzed. You know, we're so dependent on our modern technical things for everything we do.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't hurt to have some of the old skills revived for them.
I hate this thing, but it's with me all the time.
Exactly. And we have more computer power in there than they did when they launched the first trip to the moon. So it's fascinating. It's just mind-boggling, right? Right.
Well,
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 I'm glad that you chose this book.
Yes.
And that is why I belong to book clubs. Because these are books I wouldn't necessarily choose to read.
I would never have picked it up.
Exactly. And I love to be part of a book club and read somebody else's choices. It's a great way to broaden your perspective.
Yeah.
Well,
so, any parting words here? It's almost it's 5 to the hour, and we know what we're reading next. And anything you'd like to add, Peg?
I don't think so. I'm glad you enjoyed it too, or got as much out of it as I did. I mean, there was so much in there that, you know, I couldn't keep track of everybody's names, but definitely a part of history that I didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever mentioned to me. I mean, I grew up in the South, in Alabama. I know a lot about the Southern side of the Civil War. And we spent most of the year on that, and everything else just kind of went by the wayside. I don't know if they would have taught that anyway, but
very
where our emphasis was.
Well, I know we're about to wrap up, and I'm just going to apologize because I have to leave a little bit. Well, I have to leave for a 10 o'clock thing. So thank you, Peggy, Ellis.
Good to see you guys.
It was really good.
And the woman who intimidates me.
George, just one quick question. Where's the camera for you? I'm just so interested how it's got an side view.
My laptop has the camera in it, and I'm sitting in front of my big screen. If I look at the camera,
you can't see us.
I can't see you.
Interesting.
Got it.
Okay.
Besides, this is my profile.
It was good. Okay. Well, thanks. See you next month.